Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for jumping on. We'll give all of the registrants a few minutes to dial in and join the session today. Maybe by way of introduction, my name's Kale. I work with Wheel. I'd love to hear, though, while everyone's dialing in, chuck in the chat where you're from, your job title, and we've got the Olympics starting any moment now. So I'd love to hear what Olympic sport you're most excited to watch. For me, I'm a basketball fan, so I can't wait to see Patty Mills average 25 and 8 through the course to hopefully a silver or a gold to beat the last Olympic run. Christina from Dream Courts, welcome. Excited to have you here. Alrighty, a few more minutes and then we'll jump in. Oops. Adam Butcher, welcome to the session. Charles, welcome. Jeremy, Jessica, Karen, great to have you here. Really excited for today's session on winning strategies, spend management for organizations. Karen's excited for the rugby sevens. Me too. I do love the rugby sevens as well. Jeremy from Sports Accounting, welcome. And Anur, Atomic 212, welcome to today's session. Alrighty, everyone. I think that is enough. I know it's lunchtime, so without further ado, let's dive in. So as I mentioned, today we're going to be talking about winning strategies around spend management for organizations. Before we dive into, the nitty-gritty of the conversation, just want to kind of set the agenda. So we'll jump into a bit of housekeeping, then we'll do some introductions with the panel today, and then we're going to go into about 20 to 30 minutes of conversation, leaving us with anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes to answer any questions. Housekeeping. Please snooze all notifications. These can be extremely distracting as you're trying to focus on the content today. Prepare for roughly 45 minutes. We are recording the session as well, so we're going to share that with everyone who's registered and attended today. And then any questions you have, please pop them in the Q&A function. I'll be monitoring that as we go and potentially interjecting some of your questions throughout the conversation. But either way, we will definitely have time to go through those towards the end of the session. So that brings me to introductions. So as I mentioned, my name is Kale. I'm the Director of Sales here at Wheel. As I mentioned, I'm a big basketball fan. Do also love my NRL. I'm from Manly on Sydney's Northern Beaches, so avid supporter of the Manly Sea Eagles. And I'm really excited today to have Michael Gilbert, the CFO at North Queensland Cowboys, and Ben Parle, the CFO at Basketball Victoria. Michael, I'm going to start with you, mate. Could you please give us a quick overview on kind of the Cowboys and your role and remit there?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm hoping most of your viewers have heard of the Cowboys, but if not, we're a professional rugby league club based in North Queensland, competing in the National Rugby League, both the men's and women's competitions. Our women's team was admitted into the NRLW for the first time last year, and have round one of this year coming up this weekend. Quick little plug there. The girls are playing the Sharks down in Sydney, and our men's are playing the Sharks up here in North Queensland, same day, Saturday. We also have a foundation, and that's our vehicle for giving back to the North Queensland community that supports us. My role as CFO, well, I currently oversee a team of high-performing individuals delivering finance, facilities, and IT functions for both our football club and our foundation. Between the two, we're roughly 50 mil in annual sales and around about the same in net assets.
Amazing. Thanks, Michael. So excited to have you here. And Ben, over to you. Do you want to give us the quick spiel on your role at Basketball Victoria?
Sure, thanks, Cale. Great to be here today. Basketball Victoria is the state sporting body for basketball in Victoria. We're a not-for-profit, member-based organisation, 146 member associations supporting over 500 clubs in the state. We manage several leagues and competitions, as well as all the high-performance pathways, coach, technical official education and development, and a real focus on growing the game at community level. We've got about 70 staff across administration and coaching roles at Basketball Victoria, turnover about $16 to $17 million a year. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Financial Officer. My role oversees finance, IT, people and culture, integrity, and pretty much all the wider off-court operations of the organisation. I've been here for about 4.5 years with a history in some other industries. Was also at Adelaide United, the A-League club, for a while. So understand Michael, the living and breathing week to week, depending on how the team performs, often dictates the mood in the office on a Monday morning. So hopefully Michael has a good end to the season this year.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ben. Alrighty, everyone. So as I mentioned, we're going to be exploring how effective spend management can not only transform your organization's financial health and operational efficiency, but how it can actually improve overall company culture. Now, we are going to be, drawing on some insights and experiences from Basketball Victoria and the North Queensland Cowboys. I do note there's a number of attendees that aren't from sporting clubs and communities, but really confident that the content we go through is going to be applicable and usable, no matter what industry that you're actually currently working in. So let's dive in to the session. Michael, mate, I'm going to start with my first question directed at you. I really want to understand, obviously you're a Wheel customer currently, but I really want to dive into, what was the previous process that you had implemented and were using to manage employee spending and reimbursements? And what were the day-to-day challenges that you were facing, before moving across to the Wheel spend management platform?
Yep. So we had physical cards, physical company cards. There were the haves and the have-nots. Not everyone had a card. So there was a lot of card sharing, which isn't, it's kind of the enemy to financial control, not very secure. And reimbursements, we sort of dealt with via, they would be signed off by handwritten forms. Processing was very manual for both of those sort of functions with the credit cards and the reimbursements. We also had travel allowances too, which Wheel has sort of, we've wrapped that one into something that Wheel can solve for us. So our accounts payable staff would download weekly credit card statements from the online banking, into a PDF and email it out to the 15 different card holders on a Monday morning. The card holders would have until close of business Wednesday to complete a purchase order and attach all their receipts to have them approved by their leader. Card holders, they couldn't find receipts, particularly if it was someone else's transaction, by sharing their card. But once everything had been submitted, our accounts payable staff would then, on a Thursday morning, that then madly sort of rush to enter each transaction, and the reimbursement transactions into our accounting software. So I suppose in short, with general supplier and invoice payments, accounts receivable, payroll, they're all much more material functions to our finance team's weekly workflow. So we really wanted to cut back on the time spent on the credit cards and the reimbursements, and just so we could get some more time back in the week for the finance team.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michael, I remember when we first met, you had like a purchase order process for credit card spend. This is actually surprisingly more common than I would have ever thought. What were you trying to achieve by having a purchase order process on the front end of corporate credit cards?
Well, I suppose I wouldn't say it was on the front end, it was more on the back end, but it was just looking to get each transaction through the approval funnel at some stage. And it's very hard to do so, you know, at the front end of a credit card transaction. You could be in Officeworks looking to buy some paper clips. You're not going to have your leader with you everywhere saying, yes, you can do that. And same as the case with Wheel, you know, you trust your people to buy what they need to buy for the company, but it needs to drop into the approval funnel at some stage.
Yeah, absolutely. And then talking on like, you know, improving this process, like what were the strategies or processes that you implemented to, I guess, improve or simplify that approval process that you were kind of using purchase orders for, and ensuring that, you know, the staff are actually getting their receipts in and making sure that finance had the information they need to kind of close the books faster?
We found Wheel. That was the main improvement for us. Before finding Wheel, our biggest improvements were, you know, looking to scan everything into our accounting software, but that was mainly to help our year-end audit cycle. So we weren't getting copies of receipts and invoices out of filing cabinets. We could just click the transaction and view the attachment in our accounting software. But we were looking to make it more efficient in getting the attachments and the descriptions into our accounting software. So that's where Wheel really helped us. So now we get all that data into our accounting software via the individual card holder. And, you know, we no longer have to worry about card sharing. We can light up a virtual card for anyone in the business. We actually give most staff, you know, the staff that didn't previously have a company credit card, we give them what we call a $0 card, by which they can request top-ups from their leader prior to transacting on behalf of the club or our foundation. Yeah, so there's no more sharing cards. Everyone's accountable in their own name, which really improves our audit trails. Each transaction and the uploaded receipt now seamlessly syncs into our accounting software. We use Xero. And I can safely say it's given our accounts payable staff at least 1 out of 5 days back in their week. So that's a 20% boost in productivity right there.
Wow. And I think it's really interesting what you mentioned on the virtual cards and the $0 budget. I think traditional corporate cards were always reserved for like management and the C-suite. It was never feasible to give everyone a corporate card because of the risk and the application times. But I think that's really interesting that you're using the system to kind of give everyone access to a card, but you're using those spending limits and controls to essentially restrict who can spend what at any given time.
Yep, spot on.
Awesome. And Ben, over to you. I know your situation, or particularly kind of when you were making improvements to your spend management, the kind of core use case that you were trying to solve for was different, particularly around managing remote teams and the national tournaments. Can you talk us through like what were some of the unique challenges that you were facing around those national tournaments and managing the employee spend there?
Yeah, sure thing. So we are a little different in terms of how we onboarded, I guess, and came across Wheel. the solution we needed to fix when I started here, we attend 3 national championships a year, where we send 4 to 5 teams per championship. Each team has a travelling party of about 18, and we've got to try and manage the funds that they require, to feed the players, transport around, and general expenses, physio, medical expenses, and the like. So travelling parties of 70 plus people away for a week. Typically, the team managers, the coaches are all volunteers, so they're not BV staff members. So in the past, we were doing things like giving them, 8 to 10 grand cash before they go away, and then they were managing that while travelling. We had some BV bank accounts which had cards, but the cards were being passed on from year to year. They weren't in the person's name who was using them. So, if a PIN number was forgotten, the bank wouldn't speak to them because it wasn't their card. Really troublesome situation. We tried to go to prepaid Visa cards, and it worked for one championship until Visa worked out that I had 6 cards in my name. And while the team was away, they arrived in Perth at about 6 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. All their cards were declined. So they're away, 70 plus people away, 6 o'clock on a Friday, the bank's shut for the weekend. We can't transfer money to people. So a really bad situation to be in. And just through some conversation with a former colleague, they'd started using Wheel for their corporate cards, told me about the virtual functionality, how easy it was to issue and issue cards and budgets and things. So we started looking into it, and since then, we've really taken it on as a solution for that problem, and it's served us really, really well. I had great feedback from people using it, and it's improved, as Michael said, a lot of the benefits that Michael said. It's reduced time post-event. It's easier for the people using it. It's really been a great win and solved that solution for us.
Yeah, awesome. And I'm keen to dive into how changing solutions to a spend management platform has impacted, the end user and their experience. I can imagine them being on a national tournament, stuck, no money, like what do they do? But before we dive into that, I want to spend a little bit of time on what's the impact for you and your team? Ben, I know you run actually quite a lean finance team.
Yep.
So how is improving these processes changed the way that you work and how you prioritize?
Yeah, I mean, in regards to this, when people are traveling, we'd often, post-event get back, half the team managers would bring no receipts back. The other half would bring us back a garbage bag full of paper receipts that accounts payable would then have to go through and try and reconcile, enter into the system. There was stuff missing. We didn't know whether cash had been spent or it had been given out, or we're expecting cash to get back. So it was a really messy process. It was identified year after year in our audit. Audit feedback would be that this was a gap in expense reporting. So it was something that we wanted to try and tighten up. I think some of the key points that have improved the time and the workflow for our staff, given that we are such a lean team, is the direct integration. So we use MyOb, integrates directly. Receipts are now all saved. People take the photo, upload the receipt, allocate it to the right expense line, and it's instantly synced with MyOb. So rather than waiting for everyone to return from the championships, we've got visibility on spend throughout the week. We can easily adjust budgets based on who's got cards and who's running low on funds, who isn't. So not just the staff for BV, but the people on the ground, looking after these kids, essentially guardians of these kids for a week while they're off at nationals. They're not stressing about the money because we're able to change things instantly and make sure they've got the money they need to look after the kids.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Ben. So next question is, I'm really keen to dive into how you kind of manage to get internal buy-in and really around the change management and kind of how do you successfully roll out a new solution? So question for both of you, but Michael, I'll direct it to you first, particularly because I know you had a big kind of change in process as you kind of migrated to a new system. So talk us through how did you work through getting buy-in across the business, and then like actually implementing and managing that change across the organization?
Yeah, well, getting buy-in was quite easy when you're giving everyone a card. Who doesn't love getting an extra credit card, even if it's a virtual one? Um, if trust is an issue, or they're in a position that wouldn't traditionally warrant getting a company card, then the $0 cards are perfect there, and a great way of empowering your people. It's much better than having to borrow a card and all the security issues that brings.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ben, how about you? Like, how was your kind of rollout and implementation of the system? Was it a big change, or was there resistance, or was it a welcome change and pretty straightforward?
Yeah, we probably experienced both sides of it. I think internally, the staff that went from having a corporate card to a wheel card, we didn't have too many issues there. Little bit of reluctance from those. I'm going to sort of generalize a bit of the older staff who maybe aren't as IT savvy. Were a bit nervous about not having the physical card in their hand. But we created how-to guides based on the wheel information. Tailored them a bit to what we wanted people to do and how we wanted them to manage it. So they've always got that fallback to look back on. I think, as Michael said, people love having a card, and taking away that need for people to spend their own money and then be reimbursed. Just, I think, from a cultural point of view, is a positive, especially in today's environment where cost of living's tight for people to expect them to dip into their pocket and then wait for reimbursement is something we're trying to minimise as much as we can. But we started pretty small, started with a small test group of staff, made sure that it worked. And then once we were comfortable with it, we rolled it out. And really the feedback's probably our team managers, who are volunteers. We issue them a card, a how-to guide. Often they're a bit reluctant. They've come from a system in the past where we've given out cash, and they like the security of the cash. But once they're up and running with the card, I think they feel more comfortable. It's easier for them to report, and I guess the reporting means that there's no questions when they come back. We're not questioning where that cash went. It's all visible. We can see every dollar where it was spent. So it gives them some security too, that no one's challenging them and how they've spent their money.
Yeah, interesting. They can feel trusted.
Yeah, exactly.
While still retaining control with the finance team. And Ben, another question back to you. You mentioned, half the managers weren't even giving receipts. The other were kind of giving you a plastic bag full of receipts. Do you think there's been a positive behavioral change in the business on understanding the importance of submitting receipts and expense reports, but also them actually doing it?
Yeah, definitely. I think they, as the finance leader, and we're the ones that deal with the audit at the end of the year, and the auditor comes and says, where are the receipts for all these transactions? And it's up for us to try and, I guess, come up with an excuse why we don't have it. But bringing people into that process and explaining to them, these are the reasons we want you to keep the receipt, but making it easy for them to do that, so they're not having to carry around paper receipts everywhere. Banks put it straight in the app and it's done. Their duties completed almost instantly. It makes it easier for them, and then once you explain to them the reason why we're doing that, they're more than happy to take that extra couple of seconds, get the receipt, put it in the system, and be part of a solution, I guess. And like we said, it's also that trust piece. It alleviates any questions about their operations, because it's all there for people to see. Yeah,
I think this actually came from another one of our customers, but he framed it as rights and responsibilities. If we're issuing a Wheel Visa debit card to you as an employee, yes, you have the right to spend as long as it's within our expense policy guidelines. But on the back end of that, you have the responsibility to be compliant and complete your expense reports. So it's this interesting synergy of having both of those in a single platform, and then, providing the right to spend, but also driving that responsibility and that behavioural change.
Exactly right. I think the other important part is, we don't come down on people if they miss a receipt or if they get a coffee and the cafe doesn't give the receipt for a coffee. That's okay, because we're collecting 90% of receipts now, whereas in the past maybe 50% at best. So it might not be absolutely perfect and you get every single one, but we've improved our compliance considerably because of the ease of the platform.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Really interesting. And another question for both of you, but I'll start with you, Michael. Maybe more the general question. Can you talk through like different ways, and I guess this links back to how a tool like Wheel and spend management can drive a bit of a cultural change and drive a bit of a positive company culture. But I'm curious, thinking more broad spectrum, like what are the ways that you think that a finance team can actually drive a positive impact in the business, rather than being, the team that are just constantly nagging for receipts, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I think trust, you mentioned trust earlier. Developing trust is a big one to, driving a positive company culture. Sometimes to develop trust, you got to give it before you receive it. And often finance teams, they can be focused on their duty to professional skepticism in, their processing of transactions, and that can come across as mistrust at times for others in the organization. If you implement the right upfront preventative controls, I think finance teams can loosen some of the more draconian controls that only serve back-end processing, and that then allows you to build trust and in turn a positive company culture as far as the company interacts with finance and vice versa.
Yeah, great. And Ben, how about you? Like anything to add, or anything you've implemented or you see as a way that the finance team can help improve or build, a more positive culture business-wide?
Yeah, I see our finance function as part of business services. I guess we're servicing the other areas of our business to allow them to operate and do their job. And if there's ways we can make it easier for them to do their job day to day, I think that's well received by the team and improves efficiencies. So not having to carry paper receipts, making end of month reconciliations easier for people and freeing up time for them to do other things is always well received. The other one that I touched on earlier is not expecting people to dip into their own pocket for business expenses. I think that helps. It shows the business's understanding of their personal situation and not expecting them to do things that are maybe once upon a time was, how businesses operated, but these days people are less inclined to be willing to do that. So having solutions where we're not asking them to use their own money is definitely well received and helps make people feel like the business has got their best interest at heart.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, final question before we jump into a bit of a Q&A. Michael, again, I'll start with you. We're halfway through 2024, although I guess in the finance function we've just started the year. Michael, what are your key priorities for the rest of the year?
Well, we've had a pretty big last 12, 18 months in this space. We've implemented a number of process improving software systems. And I mentioned to you last week, Cale, with all due respect to Wheel, within the finance team, this one wasn't really our hero project. Our hero project in finance is been in automating our accounts payable invoice processing by machine learning systems. But as far as the rest of the floor are concerned, all our staff, this one by far and away, implementing Wheel was the finance team's hero project. It's the one that the finance team is all getting the praise for. So Yeah, we now have a lot of smart machines feeding our finance data, expertly monitored, of course, by our wonderful finance team. But you know, the machines and our people are sort of feeding this data a lot more systematically into the accounting software. So now we're turning our attention to automated dashboarding and reporting.
Yeah, interesting. And Mike, I think
our role competition. So.
yeah. And Mike, I think it's interesting, like your point on Wheel being the hero, well, perceived as the hero project to people not in the finance team, probably highlights the fact how undervalued finance can be and how little employees across the business actually understand the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's a real link component of the business. Ben mentioned before how you know, in sport, your purpose is all about sport, and we've got a football department that spends the money, a commercial department that makes the money, the finance sort of counts the money and reports on it, but we've got a number of other service departments that you know, ensure that the cogs and the wheels keep spinning. So football can do their thing, because at the end of the day, we're all about football, and whatever part finance can play in making everyone's job easier to focus on, you know, the core purpose of football. You know, that's where we got to chip in.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ben, remainder of the year, what are your key priorities within the finance function?
Yeah, we operated December 31st financial year, so we are literally mid-year. We'll turn our attention to budgeting over the next couple of months. Because the sport's growing so much and us as an organisation's growing, everyone wants more allocation of the budget to do more projects and things. So we've got to, you know, align that with our strategic plan, and make sure that we're focusing our resources in the right places. Some things from a finance point of view we want to do. Our procurement processes are not as structured as we'd like them to be, and that's probably due to the fact that the organisation has grown rapidly in the last 10 years and systems haven't kept up. Being a not-for-profit, you know, we unfortunately don't have the resources that Michael sounds like he's implementing there with machine learning and things. They're a bit of a pipe dream for us, but you know, we've got to be better at utilising technology like we have with Wheel to find better ways to do things. And you know, if we don't have the human resources to do some stuff that we'd like to do, there's, you know, today's technology presents opportunities, so we're always trying to stay across those and see what we can implement to allow us to compete with tier one sports like NRL and AFL and really lift basketball up to the next level.
Yeah, beautiful. Busy half year ahead.
Always.
All righty, Michael, Ben, thank you so much. We'll dive into some questions. So we've got a few that have come through. One from Christina, which I'll probably have a crack at answering first, because it's quite Wheel specific, but then I'll actually pass to you, Michael, as well, to kind of talk on your experience here. The question is, what is Wheel's fraud management? So look, our cards are issued and run on Visa's payment rails. So we're essentially protected by Visa's fraud controls and chargeback processes. So you shouldn't expect any different experience than you would from any other Visa card provider. We do have a lot of information in our product disclosure statements and the like on our website, but also we do have a team of experts. So if you do have quite a lot of questions to kind of get your head around fraud and security of the platform, please just come through our website, reach out to our team, and we can kind of cover all of those questions one-to-one via a phone call or a video call. The other question was, what happens if the wrong person gets the credit card number online? It's virtually impossible for another employee to access someone else's credit card number online. If a credit card number is provided to, you know, say a dodgy vendor and gets intercepted, we can obviously track and flag those, but instantly freeze or cancel that card and issue a new one, and that original card and card numbers avoid. Michael, when we spoke last week, I think you mentioned you had an experience with fraud pre-Wheel with your card. Do you want to talk through and just share your experience? Like, what was it like without Wheel to kind of go through that process of chargeback, timing, and everything there?
Yeah, sure. Without Wheel, if it's a Monday to Friday, you call the bank, cancel the card, but you can also log in online to your online banking and cancel it that way, I suppose. But then, you could wait up to 2-3 weeks for a replacement card to come in the mail, and then they don't send the replacement PIN with the card. So, it could be up to a month before the card holder is lit back up. Whereas with Wheel now, we would just log in, cancel the card, and create a new card.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael. And Ben, I've got a question directed at you. How long does reconciling in your accounting system Wheel transactions take post a national tournament now? And how long did it take with the prior system?
Yeah, good question. Previously, it was essentially the team manager, as I said, would dump receipts on our desk. The really good ones may have done a little Excel spreadsheet and trying to reconcile their spend, but that was few and far between. Now, I'm really across things as they're happening. I'm keeping an eye on budgets as we're going. I'm looking at transactions to make sure people are recording expenses and the like. The other benefit is because the system links to the chart of accounts. If it's the under 16 Vic Metro women's team, I can allocate that all their expenses go to the one line that I want them to go to. So every transaction is automatically going straight in. So post event, we jump in, we make sure that everyone's completed their expense reporting. We do a quick scan over to make sure they've allocated to the right line, and then it's straight into MYOB, and that's literally it. We can do post reporting directly out of Wheel or out of MYOB to expense lines to make sure that it all looks correct, but it's happening instantly, which is great.
Awesome. And Michael, a question for you. At the Cowboys, who actually has a card? And the question kind of goes, is it, just the head office, do coaching and team staff, and also do players have cards for per diems or travel allowances or anything?
That's a fantastic question. Traditionally, coaching have had cards, maybe, just the head coach and the GM of footy. But certainly no players in the past. But now we actually have lit up our travelling players, our players that aren't in the first team week in, week out. We've got a unique sort of situation where, we represent a region, not a city. We're one of the few professional clubs in the nation that represent a region rather than a city. And we've got some affiliate clubs in Cairns and Mackay that when our fringe players aren't playing with the top squad, they'll go back they'll travel with either our Cairns team or our Mackay team. And in the past, we've had to get clearance from the salary cap auditors to give them a set allowance based on how many days or nights they might be away. And then we would just drop those funds and that'd be the end of it. Whereas now we've received clearance from the salary cap auditors to light those guys up with cards. We give them the same amount that we otherwise would have via an allowance, but now we give it via we top up their card to the same amount, and we find where it's not all getting spent, and where then we're saving money, if you will.
Yeah, saving on the breakage. I've heard lots of stories with like those prepaid cards where there might be 10, 15, even $2 here or there left on the cards.
Yep.
And it's breakage because you just can't get it back. And they can be immaterial amounts one by one, but they can all add up over time for sure.
Yeah, and sometimes there's material amounts, like just because you've always given them $160 or $320 doesn't mean it's all getting spent. And you know, even under the new way with the virtual cards, at times they might only spend what they need to spend, and there could be a couple of $100 that, you know, gets returned to us, and that just goes to show that, you know, not everyone's motivated by squeezing every last cent out of something. They just, you know, want to get through their day to day and be able to do what it is they do for a living. So
Yeah, awesome. Look, final question from Charles. I'll answer this one. With virtual cards, does the cardholder select the chart of account or ledger items for the expense, or is this left for the finance team on the back end? So absolutely, it's the cardholder. We've built the platform to again build responsibility and onus on the employee who is making the purchase to also acquit and reconcile that expense. And I think the beautiful thing is, based on, you know, the department or the team, you can actually restrict which chart of account items they can code to drive up the accuracy of the coding across the business. Guys, that brings us to the end of today's session. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending, and a massive thank you, Michael, Ben. Really appreciate it. That was awesome. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Poll time. Are you interested in learning more about Wheel? Select the poll. Yes, we'll have someone reach out, or please send me some more information. We'll send you a bit of an info pack at the end of the session via an email. Alrighty. Thank you so much, everyone. Again, Michael, Ben, really appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of the weeks, and good luck to the Cowboys this weekend.
thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having us.